Welcome to the Home and Community-Based Services Final Settings Rule Training. Let's get started. What is the Home and Community-Based Services Final Settings Rule? The Home and Community-Based Services, or HCBS, Final Settings Rule is a federal policy to make sure people with disabilities have the kinds of services they need and want in their communities in a similar way as everyone else. The HCBS Final Settings Rule is a federal policy that was announced by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. The final rule dictates where and how Medicaid HCBS are provided and ensure people receiving services have full access to the benefits of community living and are able to receive services in the most integrated setting. Who does the HCBS Final Settings Rule apply to? The HCBS Final Settings Rule applies to all individuals who receive Medicaid HCBS. There are many components to the HCBS Final Settings Rule. Here you will see all of the HCBS characteristics listed. We have person-centered planning, informed choice, legally enforceable lease or rental agreement, accessibility, rights and autonomy in schedules, privacy, lockable doors, choice of roommate, freedom to decorate, rights and autonomy, dignity, respect, freedom from coercion and restraint, community integration, and visitors. We will cover all these characteristics in more detail in the upcoming slides. Person-centered planning. Person-centered thinking involves a deep respect for people, their individual needs, preferences, and personally defined goals and vision for life. What is the person-centered planning method? Person-centered planning is the method used to identify and address the needs, preferences, and goals one has for their life and the supports needed to achieve them. It is a process directed by the person with assistance from their support coordinator and those they choose to include on their planning team. What does it mean to be person-centered? To be person-centered means treating individuals with dignity and respect, building on their strengths and talents, helping people connect to their community and develop relationships, listening and acting on what the individual communicates, and taking time to know and understand the individual and the things that make them unique. What should the person-centered planning process include? It's important that the person-centered planning process provides necessary information and support to the person to ensure that he, she, or they directs the process to the greatest extent possible. It needs to be timely and takes place when and where the person prefers. Presents the person with a variety of support and service options based on their individual needs, preferences, and desired outcomes, and supports the individual to choose among these options. Includes personally identified outcomes related to relationships, community participation, employment, income and savings, health and wellness, and/or lifelong learning and education. Includes risk factors and supports needed to minimize them. It addresses backup plans and strategies. It includes who's responsible for implementing and monitoring the plan as well as their roles. It includes purchase and control of self-directed services as needed. It excludes unnecessary or inappropriate services and supports. It is signed by and distributed to the individual and guardian as applicable, and providers responsible for implementation of the plan. So what needs to be included in the ISP? The service plan must not prioritize the provider's preferences over those of the individual. If the provider is not willing or able to provide services in a way that aligns with the person's needs, preferences, and goals, then alternate service options should be examined. The plan must be reviewed and revised every 12 months and any time there is a reassessment of functional need, when an individual's circumstances or needs change significantly, or at the request of the individual. Informed choice. Regardless of living arrangement, individuals are provided with opportunities and support needed to engage in community life, control personal resources, have autonomy, and receive services in the community. Informed choice assures that people are aware of the variety of living options that exist and are supported to examine each option based on their needs, interests, preferences, and are free of coercion that would prevent the person moving if they choose to. Educate and support people to experience opportunities within their community for which they can base future choices. Support people to maintain their autonomy by making informed decisions. Use information found in ISPs and facilitate person-centered planning team discussions to develop support strategies that appropriately and effectively balance autonomy, personal preferences, and health and safety. Prioritize the person's personal preferences over those of the family members, guardians, and/or providers, unless deemed necessary for an established and documented health and/or safety reason. Where feasible, effort should be made to address individual preferences in the context of addressing health and safety needs. Human Rights Committee procedures apply when preferences are not addressed. People are supported to communicate their interests and work towards their goals, dreams, and priorities. How will providers support informed choice? Providers will collaborate with the individual and their support coordinator to provide people with a selection of residential and day options that include non-disability specific living arrangements. They will support people to choose the geographic area in which they live, develop housing options that do not require shared bedrooms unless requested by the person and the established roommate. In the rare cases where a person would share a bedroom, support them to choose their roommate and to consider how the arrangement would be changed should one of the roommates request in the future. And support people to develop their own schedules. Here is an example of informed choice. William lives in a supervised apartment residence that is a 1-hour drive from his family. William prefers to live closer to his family and lifelong friends. His support coordinator and planning team provide William with different supervised apartment options that are within a 30-minute drive or less from his family. His support coordinator also explored opportunities for self-directed staff supports in an unlicensed setting. His support coordinator and others invited by William joined him to visit several supervised apartments, help him to take notes about what he likes and doesn't like about each, and discuss the option to self-directed services so that he can choose the option that best meets his needs and preferences. Legally enforceable lease or rental agreement. This requirement ensures that an individual with a lease or residency agreement has unrestricted access to enter their home, common areas, and their bedroom. This requirement ensures that people who live in a provider-owned or controlled residential setting have the same rights and protection as other community members. So what information should the residential lease include? The lease or residency agreement should contain the HCBS required resident rights, and it should inform the people and providers of their responsibilities under the agreement, such as the amount and due date for rent and/or room and board, the person's responsibilities, example, maintaining his or her their living space and not engaging in activities that disrupt or potentially cause harm to other residents, the provider's time frame for giving the person a notice of service termination and/or eviction, requirements and conditions outlining when either party wishes to terminate the agreement, and information on the individual and/or guardian's right to appeal. How should the provider communicate residential lease requirements? Providers should include information about rights in a resident handbook, but the lease residency agreement must explicitly reference that the resident's rights are outlined in the handbook. And it should explain the terms of the lease or residency agreement in a format the person can easily understand. What will the provider ensure? Providers will ensure people have the same responsibilities that other tenants have under landlord or tenant laws, and will ensure people are provided the same protection from eviction that other tenants have under landlord and tenant laws. Here's an example. The XYZ provider meets with Michelle and her support coordinator to review the terms of the lease or residency agreement, including her rights and responsibilities, before Michelle moves in, so she can make an informed decision about where she wants to live. Accessibility. To comply with this requirement, providers must ensure a person's physical environment meets his or her or their needs. So how will providers ensure accessibility? People must be able to get into and out of the home, use common areas in the home, such as the kitchen, dining area, laundry area, outdoor space, and shared living space to the extent they desire. People must have the right to move freely about and not be confined to any one area of the setting. They should have unobstructed access to all areas of the common living space they wish to access. Providers will ensure that people are not limited in what they do because of environmental barriers. Environmental modifications are made as needed to increase a person's control and independence. Example, ramps, accessible cabinets and counters, modified sink control, roll-in showers, automated technology. Here's an example. Greg lives in an apartment setting. His home has wheelchair-accessible doorways in the common areas and a wheelchair-accessible bathroom, so he can easily move in and out of it. While it is important to Greg to be independent within his home by ensuring it is barrier-free, it is equally as important to him to be able to independently access all of his favorite locations within his community so he can participate in different activities. For Greg, this means living somewhere he can use transportation options, such as Access Link, so he can arrange his own transportation to get to and from wherever he wants to go. Greg's support coordinator made sure that Greg was presented with options that not only minimize barriers in the home, but also in the community where he lives. His support coordinator also checks in with him monthly to make sure his current living situation is working for him. Privacy, lockable doors, choice of roommate, and freedom to decorate. Individuals receiving services must have the same rights as anyone else has in their own home. So what are these requirements intended to ensure? No one would want to return home from a long day at work and have to knock or ring the doorbell to enter their own home. So this requirement is intended to ensure that individuals have the privacy they desire and can lock their bedroom doors if they choose. Individual homes should reflect the preferences of the people that live there and have furnishings and decorations chosen by them so that they feel happy and comfortable there. How will providers ensure privacy? Providers will ensure that people have a place and opportunity to be by themselves when they want to be alone. People have control of decisions regarding their living situation. People have the space and opportunity for privacy when speaking on the phone or on their computer, reading their mail or emails, or spending time with the guests, etc. People's information is kept in a private, confidential location. How will providers ensure lockable doors? People can lock their doors to maintain their privacy. Individuals must have privacy in their bedroom or living unit. Each bedroom or living unit must have a door that can be locked to support personal privacy. Only staff identified as necessary will have keys to the unit's door. In a shared living setting, such as a group home, the individual must have a key to the entrance of the home and to their individual bedroom. The staff determined as necessary to have a key to an individual's living unit or bedroom must be decided by the individual and their planning team and documented in the person-centered service plan. Staff should have access in the event of emergency. Through use of the person-centered planning process, individuals and their planning team must identify which staff are appropriate to have keys in the instances that would constitute an emergency, thus allowing staff to open the locked door. People have a space to secure and protect their personal belongings. Policy or procedures addressing HCBS lockable doors have been developed and reviewed with the individual. Policies or procedures would address how keys are distributed and returned, and protocols relating to information individuals of their right to a lockable door. How will providers ensure furnishings and decoration? So people are afforded the opportunity to decorate and furnish the unit according to their unique preferences. And how will providers ensure roommate choice? They will support people choose their roommate if sharing a bedroom and take action to accommodate a person who no longer wants to share a bedroom, and support the selection of housemates. Here are two examples. In the first one, Jerry recently moved into a group home and has his own bedroom. Jerry has a seizure disorder that requires frequent checks by his direct support staff. Jerry's staff knock on his bedroom door before entering to allow for privacy. Due to the assessed need related to seizures, Jerry's ISP documents that if he is unresponsive to knocks, that staff may open the door to check on him. The plan also states that staff must do frequent checks during the time he is asleep, but do not need to knock in these instances. The plan notes that his seizure activity will be monitored for additional support needs and potential ability to remove privacy modifications in the future. In the second example, Greg is an avid baseball fan and loved to watch just about any baseball game that is on TV. He wanted to decorate his room to show his passion for baseball. His staff took him to the local sports and decor stores to buy some items. He didn't seem to like any of the Mets, Yankees, or Phillies items they had in stock. When they went home, they tried to figure out why. A staff person who knows him best spoke up and said, "He's a Red Sox fan." Staff helped him get some of his Red Sox memorabilia from his parents' house and pictures of him, his brother, and father at Fenway Park. They also assisted him to get a framed Red Sox poster he wanted from Amazon. He was so happy that his support staff knew that just because he lives in New Jersey does not mean he likes the Yankees, Mets, or Phillies. Rights and autonomy schedules. Individuals must have the freedom and support to control their own schedules and activities and have access to food at any time. What choices do individuals have over their schedules? Individuals receiving services must be able to control their day-to-day lives the same way other community members do. This includes control over planning their own daily schedules and activities and choosing when and what they eat. People must have the freedom to choose their daily activities, schedules, and the locations of the activities, as opposed to being told what they're going to do. It is expected that individuals receive support needed to make choices about the kinds of work and activities they prefer. They decide what they want to eat and when, choose with whom they eat, have access to food and snacks at any time. The kitchen should be accessible 24 hours a day, and are able to have visitors at any time. You may not limit an individual's access to food unless there is an assessed and documented risk to the individual's health or safety that requires rights modification. What is an example of this? A provider may not limit an individual's access to food items based on the provider or family's personal beliefs about the individual's weight or because the provider or family has deemed the food as junk food. The provider should focus instead on helping the individual to make informed food choices. How should necessary restrictions be documented? There may be instances in which 24-hour access to food poses a severe health or safety risk to an individual. In that case, the provider may need to prevent the individual's ability to access food. Such a modification must be based on a specific assessed need, involve data collection as applicable, and must be documented in the person-centered service plan. The documentation must account for how long the restriction will be in place and when it will be reviewed. As applicable, certain restrictions will also require a Human Rights Committee review. Here are two examples. In the first one, Eric lives in a group home and has a part-time job early in the morning a few days a week. He has to wake up very early and misses breakfast on those days. He also likes to take a nap in the afternoon on work days. Sometimes he sleeps through dinner and wakes up after his housemates have gone to bed. Other days, Eric enjoys having a snack after dinner and on occasion after dessert. The provider not only accommodates Eric's schedule by helping him set his alarm clock and creating flexible meal times, but also keeps his favorite midnight snack handy for him to munch on. In the second example, Lily likes her group home and her housemates. While she enjoys the occasional group activity, her true joy is spending time volunteering at the local animal shelter. She really enjoys doing this with her support staff, Jessica, as they are both avid animal lovers. The provider accommodates Lily's preferences by scheduling Jessica to work on the days that Lily will be volunteering at the animal shelter so that she can drive her there and provide the support she needs. Rights and autonomy, dignity, respect, freedom from coercion, and restraint. An individual's rights of dignity, respect, freedom from coercion, and restraint must be upheld. Any circumstances for which restrictions are deemed necessary based on assessed need must have approval through a Human Rights Committee and be documented in accordance with requirements in the Person-Centered Service Plan. Alternative options must be explored and put in place prior to use of more restrictive measures. Individuals are supported with the least restrictions possible. Non-restrictive approaches should be put in place prior to moving towards more restrictive measures with few exceptions. People are free of abuse, neglect, and exploitation and do not live in fear of physical or emotional harm. Individuals are not threatened or intimidated to comply with organizational policies or individual staff preferences. Rights. What are some effective strategies for providers to uphold individual rights? People are informed of their rights and about their choice to exercise their rights in ways that are easily understood, and regardless if they have a guardian. People are informed about what they can do if they feel that their rights are being impeded against. People's rights are not impeded due to another person's behavior or other support needs. People are treated in a respectful manner, have interactions that enhance the person's self-esteem, capitalizes on their capabilities, supports informed decision-making, and encourages engagement in new things. Informed consent is obtained prior to implementation of intrusive medical or behavioral interventions. People using psychotropic medications have a specified psychiatric diagnosis. People are not subjected to actions by anyone which cause them physical or emotional harm. People are not threatened or intimidated to comply with organizational policies or individual staff preferences. People live and work free of the fear of physical or emotional harm. People are able to recognize and report all forms of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. People have access to a fair and impartial hearing of grievances and an independent review of limitations to personal freedoms. Dignity and respect. How do providers ensure dignity and respect? DSPs assist people with all personal care in a dignified and private manner. People are supported to eat meals with dignity and respect while assuring safety needs are addressed. Example, not requiring to wear bibs or use disposable cutlery, plates, and cups. People choose clothes, hairstyles, and makeup that meet their personal preferences with support to make informed decisions as needed. People with disabilities are included in conversations about their needs and/or experiences. Nothing about us without us. DSPs dress like community members, not in scrubs or medical attire. People are addressed by their preferred name and not hun, sweetie, or similar names. DSPs are essential community models and mentors. They should direct conversations about the person to the person, regardless of the individual's ability to communicate using words, and provide communication support as needed. Staff converse respectfully with people while providing care and assistance, regardless of the person's ability to vocalize a response. Staff use written, verbal, and nonverbal communication that demonstrates the values of respect and dignity. Freedom from coercion and restraint. How do providers ensure freedom from coercion and restraint? The provider develops and implements policies and practices that ensure the rights of people are supported and protected. The provider provides training and supports to help people understand personal freedoms and the rights of others. The provider assists the person to fully exercise their rights and make choices. The provider provides people with access to a fair and impartial hearing of grievances. Guardianship status does not prevent the person from influencing decisions. Here are two examples. In the first example, Lisa receives community-based support services in Freehold. Lisa and her staff run into Lisa's cousin Fran while walking to the library. Fran asks the staff about Lisa's medication and if it is helping her. Lisa's guardian has not signed a release of information allowing staff to share his information with Fran. The staff respects Lisa's privacy by informing Fran that the information she requested is private and confidential. The staff tells Fran to contact Lisa's guardian if she would like information about her medications. In the second example, Melanie lives in a group home setting and has a behavior support plan that includes a restriction from making phone calls to her sister outside of their regularly scheduled time. Prior to implementing this restriction, Melanie would call her sister multiple times every hour. When she could not reach her sister, she would demonstrate aggressive behaviors towards her housemates and staff. Prior to implementing the restriction, the provider agency collected data and discussed the situation with the planning team, including Melanie, her sister, the provider, and the support coordinator. After review of the data and team discussion, it was discussed that Melanie would call her sister each day at 7 p.m. This schedule was agreed upon by both Melanie and her sister and will be reviewed monthly to determine whether this phone schedule continues to be required. Community integration. People must have equal access to the same community resources and activities as everyone else. It is critical to ensure service and support delivery practices do not isolate older adults and people with disabilities from the community. Support practices must not create an environment that is institutional in nature. Providers must support people in their desires to participate in the community as they choose. So how will providers ensure community integration? Providers will ensure that people are supported to interact directly with other members of the community who are not paid to do so. People are supported to participate in community activities based on their preferences and interests. People have the opportunity, freedom, and support to define what they would like to do and who they would like to do things with. People are provided with various opportunities and supports to meaningfully engage in their communities, including running errands, shopping, going out for entertainment, eating at a restaurant, or attending a religious service. People participate in a life of the community with opportunities to meet others through routine and special activities that occur in the community. People are provided opportunities and support to pursue competitive, integrated employment. People have access to various transportation options that may include private pay, public transportation, or provider transportation, and other supports as needed to regularly access resources and activities similar to those used by the community at large. People have access to meet and spend time with others outside the HCBS setting. What rights do individuals have to access their community? It's important to remember that all people receiving HCBS have the right to access their community to the extent that they so choose, and at the same degree of access as people who do not receive HCBS. It is the provider's responsibility to ensure that people receiving services are not only offered these opportunities, but they are also educated about options, and the selection of activities is made based on individualized needs and preference. It is not acceptable for providers to offer only on-site activities or only bring community members into the facility. What about group activities? The goal of group activities is to provide opportunities for people to not just be present in the community, but integrated in the community. Groups can go out together, but people should be encouraged to engage in individual activities as desired. Providers are encouraged to discuss the activity with the group so they can plan ahead to have proper staffing. For example, a group can go out to a fall festival. One person can decide to pick apples, while another person decides to go on a hayride. Prior to attending the festival, the staff discuss what types of activities would be available and planned ahead to make sure there was appropriate staffing to support the people who chose to attend. Here's an example. Michelle receives HCBF services in the community. While engaging in community activities, she relies on preferred support staff to assist her with navigating her surroundings and communication. During a service plan meeting, it was discussed that Michelle enjoys outdoor community events and visits to local parks. While engaging in these activities, Michelle demonstrates gestures and body language that indicate enjoyment. Based on these observations, Michelle and her team have decided to explore the community groups in which she might have interest in participating in. Her support coordinator identified a local birdwatching group that meets at a local park on the first and third Saturday of every month. This option was presented to Michelle and her team, and it was agreed that her preferred staff would take Michelle to try it out. When Michelle tried the activity, it was clear that she was enjoying herself. She and her team decided that she would join the group and would participate along with her preferred staff each time the group met. Michelle now participates in this activity regularly and has made new friends in the community that she looks forward to seeing on the first and third Saturday of each month. It was learned that Michelle also enjoys watching nature programs and has a general interest in learning more about local birds and wildlife. At the end of the year, the group will participate in a community showcase. Michelle is looking forward to participating in this event, as well as others that this group may engage in. Community integration employment. Individuals should be provided opportunities to seek employment and work in competitive, integrated settings. Work can help people feel a sense of purpose and contribution to their community. It also helps people earn money that helps them engage in community life, participate in activities, and access services in the community to the same degree of access as people who do not receive HCBS. So how will providers ensure individuals have these opportunities? Providers will ensure a person's needs, desires, and options about work are identified and discussed. The person is supported to make decisions through an informed choice process, which includes having community experiences, example, utilizing community businesses, work trials, volunteering, internships, etc., on which to base decisions. People have opportunities to explore, seek, and experience employment in a competitive, integrated setting. And people are educated about resources that can be put in place to support opportunities for gainful employment. Example, NJ Wins and workability. Here are two examples. In the first example, staff helps Mai explore her skills and interests to help her identify potential job opportunities in the community. This help is provided through observing what Mai enjoys doing, chores, hobbies, leisure activities, etc., within the home, and by talking with Mai and the people who care about and support her. In addition, Mai is provided the opportunity for community activities to identify potential skills, abilities, preferences that match up to competitive employment in the general workforce. In example 2, Jackson is not sure whether he would like to work in the community because he previously only participated in center-based work and day programs. His supportive employment provider coordinates opportunities for Jackson to sample some community job possibilities, situational assessments, trial work experiences, and visit businesses that are of interest to Jackson. This way, he has some real-life experiences on which he can base his decision. Visitors. Individuals have the opportunity to develop close, private, and personal relationships without having unnecessary barriers or obstacles imposed on them. The HCBS Final Settings Rule requires that individuals be able to have visitors at any time without restriction, just like anyone would have in their own home. This does not mean that individuals can be inconsiderate of others' rights or the need for quiet and safety in the residence. It's intended to ensure that individuals who live in residential settings have the same freedoms that any of us have in relationships with visitors in our own homes. So how will the provider ensure individuals' opportunities for visitors? The provider will ensure that people must have the space and opportunity to visit with others. People are supported in having visitors of their own choosing and to visit others. People are satisfied with the amount of contact they have with their visitors. People can choose their visitors and have no restrictions on visit times or duration. And any modification to the HCBS right is based on an individually assessed need. Here's an example. Visitors are allowed at any time at Bridget's group home. Bridget's boyfriend, Mark, visits at random times when in the area. Bridget asks that he call or text to make sure it's a convenient time for him to visit. Mark does not live there, so he respectfully uses the doorbell upon arrival. Sometimes Bridget will ask that he text when he gets there, so she or her DSP can answer the door without disrupting others. If Mark visits when other individuals are sleeping or not wishing to be disturbed, Mark is expected to be quiet and respectful of all individuals who live in the home. We have now covered all the characteristics regarding the HCBS Final Settings Rule. For more information regarding these characteristics, please refer to the last slide and the first link, which will take you to the HCBS manual online. This concludes the HCBS Final Settings Rule training. For additional information, please use the references listed on this slide, including the link to the online HCBS manual, a few videos to the Bog Center, and a list of SCARC policies.